So, welcome everybody. While Steve's taking the last coffee orders, we'll get started. Well, I'm not sure if everyone read the tweet or read the agenda, but it's a 2.5-hour session. Don't be scared, it will be a lot of fun. I know the agenda is probably overwhelming, but we'll just take you along with the ride. We're going to start off very easy by getting the XenMobile introduction, showing you the features that are available, the different editions for XenMobile, some architectural slides, and showing you each component's feature set and specialties. Afterwards, Karen will take over, getting you into a deep dive session on authentication and troubleshooting. So when you leave this 2.5-hour session, you're going to be the XenMobile expert. So you're going to have fun at the bar this evening, sharing all your knowledge, being the expert. So I'm so happy I brought more time with me. And we wanted to close up with a small discussion, or at least show you what the next step for Citrix is, by sharing you some of the information on the workspace suite and have a discussion on how this is going to fit into our IT infrastructure and strategies. So that's to sum it all up. One more thing. To ensure that we are sharing all the knowledge and to trigger ourselves as well to share those lessons learned, we have added some notes into this presentation to ensure that while we're on topic, we are sharing all the information. And now I'm getting nervous. Welcome, guys.
Hi. We thought we'd come in a bit later. So
yeah. So nice of you to bring in all the people from the street into the session.
Yeah.
There's no queue outside.
So you continue in French now.
Pas de problème.
Ah, oui.
So, let me first introduce myself. I've been working for 15 years or even more, but then we're going to guess my age, so let's say 15 years in IT as a consultant. Currently working as a senior technical consultant at Pepperbyte, doing different roles, implementing, designing, both for small businesses and very large environments. And some of you may already know, I also wrote a book about it. Yeah, I had to make that one. So.
It's still developing.
Yep.
And I brought along Martijn.
I'm Martijn. As well, more than 15 years of experience. I started out as a logistics engineer before going into IT, but now mainly focusing on designing and architecting infrastructure solutions in the desktop delivery world. And recently deep dived into XenMobile, the whole mobile delivery space. And next to that, I love cycling, so I'm Dutch.
And that's,
yeah.
So that's your bicycle standing outside?
oh.
No, I left it at home. I figured with all that beer, cycling was not my main priority.
And you didn't cycle over here then?
No, I did a 120-kilometer tour the day before.
He came prepared.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started. First of all,
Going to the picture.
running to the high for the viewers at home. To make sure that everybody's at the same level, we wanted to share some of the definitions on mobile management. First of all, that's the easy one, mobile device management, which obviously focuses on the devices, mobile devices. And there's also the second stream focusing on mobile application management, which once again focuses on the mobile apps. And to get the whole suite up and running, Gardner also identified a third one, calling it mobile enterprise management, or enterprise mobility management, which focuses not only on the technical implementation, but on people and processes as well, combining it or addressing it as mobility management or mobile computing. So that's just to let you know that there are different streams or tracks when it comes to mobility. And if we're translating those three definitions to XenMobile, you'll see that there are also 3 editions available for XenMobile. First of all, there's the MDM edition, which is your mobile device management edition, focusing once again on the mobile device management of it. Second of all, there's the XenMobile App edition, which focuses on management of the mobile apps, so it's at the application level. And to comply with the mobility management or mobile computing part, there's the Enterprise Suite, the Enterprise Edition for XenMobile, which combines both your device management and your application management, and also adds additional features for share file because it's using the Enterprise Edition.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's the great edition. Makes it powerful.
Yeah, because with the other 2 editions, you only get the share file standard edition included, so there's a difference. So, what do we get when we're using one of the XenMobile editions? First of all, the main focus for the MDM edition is your XenMobile Device Manager, because you're managing those devices. Second of all, with the App edition, you get your App Controller, which is all about managing your application settings and policies. And third, there's the Enterprise Edition, which gives you both the Device Manager and your App Controller, and also the integration of those components and Enterprise, share file Enterprise as well. So let's get to the fun part, or at least might be the fun part. Oh, you're tweeting while I'm presenting. Nice.
Yeah, cool.
XenMobile Enterprise, what's the architecture like? So I tried to set up a basic infrastructure on my internal network using your Active Directory, Exchange, some database servers, and PKI infrastructure for those certificates. To ensure that my external users or mobile users can use their mobile devices, I'll have to enable remote access to those internal resources. Therefore, logically, I'd implement the Netscape, and this way, the gateway, at least. To get started with the MDM edition, I'll need to implement or install the Device Manager. As of 8.6, it can be included on the internal network or positioned there by using the Netscaler gateway to build up the tunnel.
Using SSL offload.
Using SSL offload. Thank you.
Yes.
Going nicely. Very important, to manage your Apple devices, you'll need to use the Apple push notification services, because that's the way Apple has designed all configuration pushing and app pushing to your Apple devices. So be aware that that's an additional external component that you need to implement in your design as well. Moving on to the App Edition. The App Edition focuses on the App Controller. And if you, because the App Controller is your mechanism to push your mobile apps, your web, and your SaaS apps. And if you have the Storefront and Send Desktop implementation already available on your internal network, or are planning to, you can also integrate your App Controller with Storefront to ensure that you can also push your Windows published apps and published desktops to your mobile devices. And last but definitely not least, the data component by using share file. ShareFile uses a cloud authentication part, or the backplane if I'm not mistaken. Control plane, almost got that right. And internally you can implement your storage zones servers to get your on-premises data to make it available for your ShareFile users, and even implement storage zone connectors which allow you to give users direct access to your internal SharePoint or network shares. So, what are we going to focus on for the first hour of this presentation? Those two important new components for XenMobile. The device manager first, app controller after that. And then we'll focus on the enterprise. So, let's continue with the device manager. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
First of all, device manager. It's a Windows-based component, so it's a Windows installation which uses your Apache web server and also requires a database for all configuration data storage. Citrix does offer a Postgres installation when you install, or by default when you install the device manager, but it is advised, especially for production and enterprise environments, to use your existing SQL server infrastructure. So you can easily make the decision while you're installing the device manager, but it is advised to use a SQL server because that gives you more scalability.
Yep.
Okay.
More scalability and combining the two to a high available cluster using Postgres involves a lot of coding in the websites, and I don't know what language they use, but it's a pain. If you make a typo it doesn't work, then figure out where the typo is.
After the installation, all additional configuration for Device Manager is run through the web console. So that's the main part of configuring all your device settings. And we'll show that later on. Very important, Citrix has offered a pre-installation checklist on the eDoc site. Please check it out. Make sure that you understand all the available or the information that you need to apply, or all the settings that you have to prepare, because this will be your lifesaver once you start your installation. To make sure you're not forgetting that one, and make sure I put a note on there.
It's absolutely crucial to use this checklist. If you don't, and we made the mistake, you end up running halfway through your installation. Oh, why is this not working? Why is the installation not continuing? It just stops. And why? And this is a pain to figure out what you need and what you don't, but get it in place before you start your deployment.
Yeah, because I started before checking the list, and I had to cancel my installation because I didn't have my Apple push notification service certificate in place. So that took me another 2 days to get the certificate back and re-continue my installation.
2 days, it's a very good value.
Oh yeah.
For some customer you need 4 weeks or even 6 weeks.
Yeah, so it is important to start way ahead of going to the customer side and trying to install the device.
Yeah, but it totally depends on the procedures the customer uses, but the 2 days are just if you have everything in your own control. Then it takes about 1 to 2 days, depending how fast your ticket gets.
Yes, but you need an account, an Apple developer account, and your company has to be verified by Apple and by other companies. There is a huge directory of all companies worldwide, and you have to get an ID there, and this can take up to several weeks.
Yeah, this is not the first step is relatively simple, but the part you're talking about is when you want to sign applications yourself, and that takes a long time.
So we'll get about is using the certificate draft.
Yeah, that takes a lot.
That's a separate account is when you're doing for the app control at the end.
No, it's okay. We'll get to it later on.
But it's a good point.
Nice. So, as 2.5 hours is already a long presentation, we didn't want to stress it out even more by showing you the entire installation procedure or all the configuration settings. We decided to put up all the URLs to the Citrix documentation so you can, after we share the presentation, take your time to figure it out, read it, and if you have additional questions, just look us up and we'll be happy to address all the questions. So, along the presentation you'll see all the URLs that we used as references for this presentation. Oh, yeah, one more thing.
Yep. Didn't check it, but it was so highlighted. Disable it because it's not supported to run IP6 on device manager. I haven't figured it out why, but it has to do something with routing and control, I guess.
Now we're all looking at you, Carol.
Yeah. You're a specialist.
I don't know why.
No.
That is true.
It's true.
It is true. So keep in mind to disable your user account control and the IPv6. Oh, one more!
Yeah, one more. We try to use public certificates in the device manager. It's not necessary. Just go with the flow of the install. It creates all separate self-signed certificates. If you want to do a second device manager and load balance the thing, just copy the certificates over to the new server and it runs fine. There is no need to go with public certificates. It's more hassle.
So
more
don't
complex.
stress yourself out. Just go with
click through.
pre-configured certificates. Nice. So, once we have it up and running, how do we proceed? By configuring. Well, these are the basic steps to get to the process of configuring your XenMobile device manager and enabling those mobile devices to enroll and use all the preset configuration that you have configured. So, we'll zoom in on some of these steps. So, I think the main one is creating policies, because the previous steps are pretty logical through the connection to Active Directory, making sure that you have all your users in place and are good to go. Oh, yeah, of course, there is another one.
Yeah, please take into account you need separate deployment packages for each OS. So if you want to do Windows, whatever is possible with Windows, we'll get to that. iOS, Android, doesn't matter. Every platform has its own stack of policies and deployment packages.
Sounds nice. So, how do we create policies? Well, as mentioned, you have to create a policy for each mobile OS type or mobile device type. You simply select your user management console to create those policies. And we'll show how it works later on in the demo if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just quickly going to run through it. This is just an example of, for instance, pre-configuring Wi-Fi settings for your mobile users. So they do not have to remember the password of your internal Wi-Fi SSID. So that's enabling or making it easier for your users to use those mobile devices on your internal network. And once more, just to make sure that you understand why. Yeah, I can handle this one.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, each OS type has different APIs. So that's the main reason why there are different settings and different available options for each OS type. And to give you a small idea on what that looks like, these are the different configurational settings for Android devices. So that's pretty nice. These, or even, I think it's up to here.
Didn't fit the window.
Fit the window. These are the available options and configuration settings that you can use for iOS devices.
And now comes the disappointing part.
Disappointing? It's pretty... no hassle, just keep it simple. So these are the available options for Windows devices. In future editions, this will probably be extended because Citrix is still getting a hang of the Windows API, and Windows is improving the APIs while we are implementing it. So be aware that for now, it's not the smartest thing to set up your Windows support just yet, but it will be coming very soon. If you have configured policies, then you're already making some good progress in supporting your mobile devices, but you need a mechanism to push those configurations or those policies to your mobile device. Apple has given us a great mechanism with the Apple push notification services, which can be used to actively push those configurations, those policies to the devices. With Android, it's a
little bit different. Android doesn't know of a push mechanism, so you need to incorporate the scheduler mechanism with the first package you push to the device. So it regularly checks if new policies or new packages are available, or changes on packages are available for those devices.
So
that's the main difference. If you forget the scheduler policy, nothing happens. And you have a sort of non-managed device.
Yeah, because Apple needs to, or Android needs to pull in the first configured policy or the scheduler settings when it enrolls, when the device is enrolled, and then it knows to regularly check actively. So
yeah.
it's
so just as an example, if you think you have the Android devices managed and you want to do a remote wipe, if you don't have a scheduler, no wipe.
So that makes the iOS devices a lot safer than the Android devices, because I can stop my scheduler on the Android device myself.
Yeah, but it's all about the APIs. It's true, but it's up to the customer if they want to choose iOS or Android.
Yeah, and another problem is on the Android. If you want to configure the native mail application, you get a lot of that's not working out of the box.
They have extra apps for that that you need to buy, and then you can get that running.
Yeah, exactly, but it's not running out of the box, and with iOS it's just next finish.
Yep. And for now, the iOS is by far the best platform to roll this out.
We all know that. It's good, and don't use it.
Thanks for confirming that. So if we want to push our policies to the devices, we need to use deployment packages. That was what started this line. This is an example. It's not just about enabling or selecting the policies, it's also about setting your schedule and making sure that you have it connected to the right group that is that you want the app to use, or that you want to have specific policy settings.
Or in this example, we have a geofence warning in this package. So when the tablet goes outside its geofence range, the user gets a warning.
Yeah, I know that using it in restaurants, if you want to get the iPad home and it starts to blink and blink. Just from a cousin, from a friend, from, yeah. So, and one of the nice features in the device manager console is the fact that if you have configured and set up your deployment package, it will show you how many devices the deployment package is deployed to.
Yeah, waiting, failed, and successful.
So that's a quick way to see if the deployment package is reaching all your mobile users and being configured correctly. Another great feature is if we want to have our mobile users enrolled into XenMobile, we can rely on them being smart enough to do the whole enrollment and entering the URLs, connecting to your internal environment. But there's also the option to pre-configure enrollment invitations for your users, either by sending them an email with an invitation URL, password information, different options to make it more make it easier for your users to automatically enroll into the right corporate environment.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's one more.
The certificate again, just note, iOS without this certificate, no go.
Because once more, you'll need the push services from Apple to get all the settings to your mobile device. And it does rely on your own certificate to ensure that you are authenticated.
And you are trusted by Apple.
Trusted by Apple. Who doesn't want to be trusted by Apple?
I know too.
So, did you learn any lessons while you were?
Yes. Certificates. The whole structure is based on certificates because it needs to be secure, etc., etc. And one of the things we ran into while developing this is that there are a lot of entry points into the solution, and because of testing, it's very convenient to have a wildcard certificate, so you can use a lot of different URLs without going through the processes again of getting a new certificate. And oh, I forgot one. It might be handy to split this traffic to a new URL. For instance, the enrollment process and the works home. They're two different. You can combine the two with the NetScaler, but that's extra complex. And troubleshooting gets more difficult because it's all the same URL. So it is handy to use a wildcard, just to be sure that you can add extra. Yes.
As an alternative, can you use a sample certificate? Subject alternative, where you can inject multiple certificates instead of a wildcard?
Sure, we tested that, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of companies that don't allow wildcards.
Yeah, sure. But it's not the only way, it's just making your life easier. You can do it by using separate certificates, but it takes more time. Again, you can go back to the checklist. If you prepare it well, it shouldn't be a problem. Internally, there's a lot of certification going on in the internal network. Build your own PKI infrastructure if it's not there already. If you want to use certificate-based authentication on your devices, you will need an internal PKI infrastructure. And add the roots certificate authorities to the NetScaler, to the XDM and the app controller.
Yeah, so you have your trusted chain of certificate chain in place, and you're not running into any additional problems.
And again, use the XDM self-signed certificate during the install, and don't make your life very difficult.
Complex.
Complex.
Challenging.
Challenging. Yeah, if you like challenging, go ahead. The major point is get the request for the Apple push notification service in early, so you don't get stopped during the install, because this install will not finish if you don't put in the certificate. Yeah.
The self-signed certificate, is it only used for internal?
Yeah, it's only used by the device manager.
Yeah.
It ends up sort of in the communication between the device, but it's not used for public authentication. And just to give you an example of how it works, you create your own certificate, you send it to Citrix, and they sign it, and then you go up to the developer account, you upload it, to get signed by Apple, and then you're good to go. So this part can go relatively easy if Citrix acknowledge your request pretty quickly. Next one. URLs. Again, we have a lot of different entry points into the network. Just saying, if you have an existing access gateway that has to be replaced, that's a URL. Maybe you have Outlook Web Access, that's a URL. But for this solution, you have different entry points. Write them down, make sure they are understandable, that you know which URL is what. It makes your life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and the pre-install checklist makes you write down the information as well, so it takes you along the ride, makes you aware of all the URLs that need to be in place.
But it can be complex because the checklist is for the enterprise solution, and it's split up in device manager, application controller, and the first time you see it, it's kind of overwhelming. So make sure you take your time to understand what you need for your deployment. Yeah, auto-discovery, if you want to make life easy for your users. For Android and iOS, auto-discovery record, you need to register with Citrix Cloud Ops. It's just create a ticket at the help desk. And it gets done pretty quickly. They just want to know your URL. It's basically if you enter a mail address, it takes the domain name and points it to your XDM URL, so your enrollment URL.
Yeah, it's still hard-coded in the XenMobile device manager configuration to check the database, the Sciberras database with all the discovery records. So that's the reason why you have to contact Citrix Ops to get your record included as well, so you can
it's sort of the auto-discover cloud service.
And the benefit for this is that users will need to put in
Sorry,
they won't need to put in the URL, they can just put in their email address.
Okay, well, that's fine. The only small difference, and that this leads against using wildcards. If we want to do it for Windows at the moment, Citrix wants to upload your certificate into their database, otherwise it won't work. And that's a little bit of, do you want to do that? In our demo environment we did it, just to figure out how it works, and it was kind of disappointing. And that comes to the next one, supporting what Karen just said. Make sure your authentication is done on UPN names and not on SAM account names. It makes your user's life easier.
Yeah, because else your user has to switch between entering its email address and then having to re-enter its own user account again.
We'll show that later on in a short demo.
Okay, nice.
You're up again.
Oh, yeah. So, let's continue with the app controller. Or if there are some questions that you want to ask first, we'll wrap up the device manager. This is my fun part because it's all about the apps. Once more, as we mentioned with the device manager, all the installation and configuration information is provided by Citrix, which is good information. So check it out. We included the URLs, so you can easily refer to that information after we have shared the presentation. I've included the controller configuration and Netscaler as well, so you should be all set up to get it up and running. So, what is the app controller? In contrast to the device manager, which is Windows-based, the app controller is a virtual application, appliance. So, it is supported on all the major hypervisor implementations, so you can quickly import the virtual appliance and get it up and running. And with all virtual appliances, you'll need to log on to the console and pre-configure your network settings and even your high availability settings if you want to have or cluster if you want to have multiple devices and put in some additional disaster recovery. So, and after that, we can switch over to the web console and configure all our app configuration settings. So let's look at the console. After configuring your basic settings and your integration, if you want to have that with Storefront or ShareFile, this is the main tab that you will be using to configure your apps. It's all about the apps and documentations. So what it does is that it offers you for each mobile device type, once again, I need to configure the apps for Android as well as for iOS if I want to support that. And also allows me to include web application and SaaS applications. So what does this mean for a user? Because now I'm all of a sudden configuring an enterprise app store.
Yep.
Yeah. So it allows the user, after it has enrolled its device, to use the Works Home app to open up the Works Store, which is our enterprise store. And that allows me or the user to select or subscribe to all the different apps that I have provided. That can be your native mobile apps, your web, your SaaS apps, but also if I have Storefront integrated, it can be my Windows published apps, my Windows published desktops. As a user, I simply just select one of the available app icons, press add, and it all automatically will install and add the link to my apps. And even allows me to include the link directly on my mobile dashboard or workspace. I'm not sure what the right naming is. So that's to give you an idea of how easy we are making it the user to use those apps through the corporate app store. One of the main features or very important differences in comparing to the device manager that is also able to push apps to devices is the fact that I can use MDX enabled apps. MDX is, I'm not quite sure what the definition is, but it's just take your time.
You mean what MDX means?
Yeah, I'll get to what it stands for, but
it's basically it's a wrapping tool that will be able to wrap any application, and we basically want to include different policies which then can be configured for that application, and then you can be able to control that application.
Yeah.
So it just adds those MDX applications to any app that you have. If it's an IPA or APK format, and then it will put it in an MDX format, and to allow you then to configure the different policies.
yeah, it's kind of a high definition experience for mobile users. So what it allows us to do is to include additional policy settings or app settings with the MDX enabled app. This allows us to pre-configure your app or even configure whether your app is restricted to some of the mobile device features, like your onboard camera. We can disable the use of that. We can disable cut and paste options for your app. So if you need to push a very secure, highly secure business application to mobile devices, you are in control of how secure that information is contained within the application.
Just to make an example, compared to the XDM server, where you can also set most of these settings because it's in the API of iOS for in this example. This is on an application level, so we can containerize the applications compared to the whole device.
So for example, if you wanted to say disable the camera, if you're doing it on the XDM, you're going to disable the camera for the whole device. None of the applications can access the camera. While for this, with this setup, you can just choose, for example, Worksmail, and only Worksmail won't be able to access the camera. All other devices, all other applications on the device will have access to the camera. So this is on a per application basis.
Exactly.
And if you want to change this, do you need to redeploy the application? Or is it just a
No,
policy?
it's
a
an
policy
update.
setting.
It's an update. So that's why Android needs to have that check. If you change something, Android needs to check it for itself if the policy is there, if there is a change. And then you will see a push of the new settings coming down. With Apple, it uses the Apple mechanism and just pushes it down.
Android is more of a pull, so it regularly pulls and checks if there are changes in the configuration. But it is a simple policy configuration setting in your app controller, so you do not need to rewrap your app. If you are interested in the different policy settings, because it all depends on the APIs available for each mobile OS, we have included the links to the eDoc sites that mentions all the different policy settings that are available. Oh, there's one more thing.
Yeah.
It's just a minor detail.
Minor.
Yeah. If you want to use the NDX toolkit, you'll have to get yourself a Mac.
Yeah, Apple found a way to get us on the Mac.
Even if you only want to use Android.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want.
We even tested it on a virtual Mac, which is not quite legal, but it doesn't work.
And here you would need to have a developer account. So going back to what you were saying, for this spot you need to have a developer account to be able to run the applications.
So we almost discussed all lesson learned.
Almost.
So, but why is NDX important? First of all, if I use an NDX enabled app, I get the additional option to use the micro VPN tunneling to my internal resources. What it does is it uses the VPX tunneling mechanism of the NetScaler, but it's only configured at an application level. So it's just the app getting the tunnel to your internal resources. So all other apps that you are running on your device will not be able to plug into that VPN tunnel and use it. It's only that application that has the connection to your internal resources. So this does mean that if you're running multiple NDX apps, you are also running multiple micro VPN tunnels to your internal resources. And once more, it's simply configured by setting your network access policy settings for that application. Another addition is the fact that your NDX enabled app and all its data is sandboxed on your mobile device. So it is put into an encrypted container and allows you, or at least ensures, that not different apps are able to get to that secure data.
Yep.
And there's another cool feature, that's the app interaction. What it does is it allows us, through your app configuration, to granularly decide how your NDX app is able to communicate with all the other NDX apps. So it allows me to control whether cut and paste options are available, whether a link to a PDF file in WorksMail can be opened in Adobe Reader, if they can exchange information. And not only can we configure that for all the NDX application set, but we can also define security groups, which allows us to get a subset of NDX apps that we want to interact. So we can really narrow it down, just make sure the NDX apps are all a member of the same security group name, and they are able to interact.
So for example, if we would use this security group, if we only want these apps to talk to each other, we put in here, for example, a document or whatever name, configure the correct policies as we want it, and these three apps can talk to each other but not outside the virtual container.
Nice. Citrix also offers additional apps through the Works suite that they have introduced. One of those apps is Works Web, which is a browser, internet browser, but due to the NDX enabling of that app, we can use it as a very secure intranet browser, because it can use the micro VPN connection to get to our internal web services, and we can even configure which websites we allow or block, or pre-configure the home page that is shown for our browser.
So if you have a really locked down iPad and you just want your users to go to the internet, or in a hospital, you don't want the iPad to go to the normal internet, you can completely lock it down and force all traffic through the micro VPN into your internal network without the user being able to go to the internet via another way on that device. But it's an extreme example, but there might be a use case for it.
Do keep in mind that WorksMail is not offered as an MDX ready app, so you need to wrap it yourself.
Yeah, pre 8.5, it was delivered as a pre-wrapped container, and then they skipped it.
And now we're all
we need to
looking
wrap,
at-
and now we need to go to a Mac.
I think it has to do with the API certificate, because you need to
Yeah.
have your own API certificate to be able to wrap the applications, and you can't share that out. I believe that's the reason.
Yeah, that's what we figured.
These certificates are expiring.
The app developer certificates.
You have to renew them every year.
And then I have to rewrap my app as well. So we haven't had that experience yet because we're not running for a full year yet. We'll get back to you next year. So there's one more app that I wanted to zoom in on, which is the Works Mail. This enables you to use a highly secure email client that is pre-configured with all your corporate Exchange settings. And also can be configured to include all your corporate contacts or not.
Yep.
Once more, you need to enable it or wrap it as an MDX app yourself. Once more with the personal certificate that you need to assign to the app. And it does use the micro VPN connection by default.
Yep. So if you don't want that, Citrix posted a good blog or ticket about it. If they saw that the battery drain was very high, and they lent the STA mechanism from XenApp to give the authorization ticket a bigger lifespan, and that means fewer authentication cycles, and that means a big improvement on battery drain. So please, if you implement it, don't forget this step. Otherwise your users will complain that the battery drain on the iPads is not nice anymore.
They would have to re-authenticate quite a few times, so with the STA they don't have to authenticate.
Yeah, it's
so.
with every check, so and it's a high CPU cycle,
Yeah, if you have
very
set,
intensive CPU cycle.
yeah, if I have set the app to pull every 5 minutes whether or not there's new email. It will use it will rebuild the micro VPN tunnel every 5 minutes, and it will go through the whole authentication process every 5 minutes. If I'm using the STA method, my secure ticket is still available and is still authenticated, so it will build that tunnel directly and not get through the re-authentication process.
Does this also change the sizing guide for the Netscaler? Because if you look at the Netscaler for the sizing guide for XenMobile, it's quite aggressive, to say the least. I can imagine that
because you don't have to go through the SSL offload over and over and over and over again. True. So I haven't seen it as in real life figures, but just logically thinking, it must offload a lot of traffic.
yeah, most of the load will be caused by work now, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you have some lessons learned?
Probably.
You want me to introduce them?
Just go next. Again, certificates. If you go through all the entries into your network, it's all about certificates. Can't stress it enough. Get all your URLs again, and get the right certificates in place, the right positions on the Netscalers, VIPs for the different functions, and get them all out. An extra is we prefer to do the native Windows apps directly through the Netscaler to Storefront, because I don't really see the use case yet for web and SaaS apps on a Windows device, because they have their own way of getting there. And that's another extra URL, just to keep it simple.
Yeah, realize XenMobile is all about your mobile devices, but you still have all those laptop users that are using Windows-based or Mac-based OS devices, and they will use the direct connection to Storefront to get all their apps.
It is possible to route it through the app controller, but it doesn't have all the features of which Storefront has at the moment. So it's not the full native experience that an end user will have if you route it through the app controller. It works, but it's not quite there. Application wrapper, yeah, get an enterprise Apple developer account. It's about 300 euros. There is also a personal account which costs 99 euros, and it's a bit of a pain. If you do that, it's limited to 100 devices, and you need to include each UID, or what it's called for Apple, of each device. So if you want to switch devices, you have to go through the whole process of getting that new device registered again in your setup. The return time on the 200 euros is probably a lot quicker than you think. It only runs on Mac OS, as we said. Virtual Mac doesn't work, we tested that. And the Android apps also built through the Mac. And that's basically because they started developing on a Mac and never developed the Windows version, especially for Android. So you need a Mac.
Okay.
Next one?
Oh yeah, there's some enterprise features. Once more, just to make our presentation live a little more simple. We've included the URLs to all the integration, because with enterprise we can integrate our device manager with the app controller, as it is explained at the eDoc site. And we can also integrate our app controller with ShareFile to even make our app controller a SAML identifier. So, as mentioned before, ShareFile Enterprise that comes with your XenMobile Enterprise license does offer you storage zone connectors. This allows us to directly connect to your internal SharePoint site or your network shares. Right from your ShareFile application you get an additional folder in it, linking directly to your internal resources.
And in the next releases, but for those of you who have seen the Synergy presentations, there are a lot of connectors coming. For example, to Dropbox, which raised my question, for me a question, does this introduce a security risk?
It's a migration tool to get my Dropbox information into my corporate.
But we also get a lot of stuff into our network which we might not want there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least it gives us back some of the Dropbox spree that is going on.
More storage, it's always good.
And for instance, it does allow us through the network shares to give users direct access to their home drive or personal and group data. But I do believe that another important question, if you are having your XenMobile enterprise licenses in place, is when am I going to use my device manager and when am I going to use the app controller? Or how do I combine both? So to put it all in a very black and white proposition, and this is the way I see it. Maybe Martijn has a different opinion, but I do believe we are on the same page.
Yeah, we're pretty much on the same page.
Yeah. What I figured is if you're using a choose your own scenario, you as a corporate are the owner of the devices that you give or let your users choose. This allows you to get control of the device and simply use your device manager to push those extra corporate policies that you want to have in place. Very nice. But there's also that big scenario called bring your own. This allows us to have users bring in their own devices, their own mobile devices, and use our corporate apps on those devices. And in my opinion, it's not very ethical, even though we can have all the procedures in place and all the corporate policies in place that enforces our ownership of those mobile devices. I do believe that you cannot be fully in control of a device that a user has brought and bought for himself. So, in my opinion, the best strategy is to use your app controller and get your business control back at that application level. Because those are your corporate apps, and you have control over those apps, and you can install your usage policies more easily than get at that device level.
And you have to search a little bit for it, but you can do a wipe in using the app controller.
And that's a selective wipe?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just wiping at an application level. Yeah.
So there is a way to get all that information available to you, which was a search also. It's a lesson learned that's not here, but the whole interface is empty until you put in a name of a user, and then all of a sudden your whole list gets filled up and you get the information.
And it's not like a kind of mixed mode is not available. You can use your device manager, for instance, to push those Wi-Fi configurations to mobile devices for the internal network, even to the bring your own devices, because that will make life easier for your users. But the best strategy is to stick with that enterprise app store, because that will give you a centralized store that can deliver pre-configured and controlled apps to all your users. And the way I figured it, it also offers you some seamless migration option by offering both the Windows apps and the mobile counterpart apps for your users, giving them the choice to get the best user app experience on their mobile devices. Because using Windows apps on a mobile device sometimes can be challenging. And there are also some lessons learned.
Yes. The integration challenge. If we go to the enterprise suite, build it like you were doing just XDM first, app controller first, and then start integrating. So test the XDM first, have it running, app controller part, have it running, and then start the integration process. Because that verifies the different components if they work correctly. Afterwards, you can verify the whole enterprise-wise. If you don't, all the traffic goes crisscross. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly where your problem is if you're not sure every single architectural component is working as designed. Certificate-based authentication, you need your internal PKI infrastructure. Why is certificate-based authentication useful? It makes the life of your user easy. They can open up the sandbox by just entering a PIN. And in my opinion, if the security rules are not that strict, it's just enabling your users to have it easy. Just PIN and go. And not typing in an AD password that has 10 characters and
special
characters, and that's not it's not user friendly on a mobile device. Next one. Yeah, always use a test device. I've never wiped an iPad so many times during this this deep dive. You don't want to use your personal device because sometimes you will do a full wipe, then a selective wipe, and then something gets stuck and you need to do a factory wipe. It's just not convenient. Make sure you have test devices. And my support article about the logs. The logs can be very overwhelming. They're pretty difficult to read. If you go through them very carefully, you will find the information you need. But there's a nice support article about where the logs are and what.
How to use them, how to read them.
Exactly. For Enterprise, account provisioning, that's a feature we ran in recently. We were trying to integrate the account provisioning from a ShareFile point of view. We are now able, if we just put a user in an Active Directory group that gives access to the ShareFile, the share file, the app controller will automatically talk to the control plane, create an account there, and sync the information back to us to enable the user to access the share file in a transparent way. So if the share file app is on the iPad, it works without any extra authentication. And we found out that on the app controller there's an admin page.
Ghost's got a mind of it.
The scheduler is installed.
Because remote control.
Yeah, I think we pushed the policy, I'm sorry.
We locked it down.
Remote wine.
No coffee. There is a configuration and a manage users. If we go to the manage users,
Yeah, sorry. Paying attention.
I just searched for one user, and if we go to the next slide, we can see that it has no current accounts, no pending workflows, so no requests for apps, no enabled apps, and there is nothing to report because this user has not been enrolled in the previous session. And next, I asked or searched for Ring, and his account had apps. And if we drill down into the share file app,
I can do that.
and now comes the fun part. This basically depicts the enrollment process and if it's finished or not. And just to be on the safe side, green is not okay. This is, don't know if you can read it, but it says reconcile, and it means that we have to do something. If we right-click it, it might be an account that has this whole setup tests on first name, last name, your mail address, and if you have multiple accounts like a test Martijn or an admin Martijn, it doesn't know to which account it should match. And then you have to reconcile it, and then if everything goes well, this dot becomes red, and then it's fine.
So red, do not touch it.
No.
Green, just go ahead and...
Like a real admin, we don't read, we just look at the colors. So this was wrong. And we then started reading and thought, hey, it's just the opposite.
Have you figured out the interval that the app controller...
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 5 minutes for the app controller to talk to the AD, so the sync, if you put, yeah. It's 15 minutes for the app controller to talk to the control plane, and then the sync back is once a day at 2 a.m. in the night.
So you're all good to go.
So if something goes wrong and you test something, you have to wait till the next morning, and then you can test. If it's wrong again, you have to wait another day.
Isn't it mentioned in the property plans?
No, we already had a support ticket, and the support guys was, isn't that possible? I'll get back to you. That was the answer. And we're still waiting for the answer.
Yeah, the answer is still pending.
By the way, which tool?
It's the 2 o'clock you mentioned in the control plane. You can set a time zone, and it's your time zone 2 a.m.
Just to make it less confusing.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
Yeah, so yeah, there are still some tweaks that can improve.
So
we did a lot of talking about all the features, and we figured, well, this is E2E, so it's probably even more fun to introduce our very own personal chief demo officer.
We were going to do some live demos because the internet isn't that quite well at the moment. We created some recordings yesterday, so we're going to show you some recordings we made earlier.
Yeah, so we're going to show you 2 enrollments, one on Android and one on iOS, just to show you the difference. And the other differences we're going to show is the difference between using a SAM account name or, let's say, a URL to enroll, or using a email address from a user perspective.
Maybe if you turn off the presentation,
Yeah.
you'll get the screen back, then it's not presenting. No, it's okay. We're trying to figure it out.
But there are a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah, maybe you can help me. Esther.
Yeah.
We will stop the presentation. We have to use the mic.
So, Martijn, will the next version, will that be more integrated on the back end as well?
Well, we just wanted to make it.
I hope so.
Good answer.
Maybe Karen could shed some light on that later.
So,
Sorry?
do you want to do the Android or the iPad?
The first matter.
So this is the iPad enrollment. We already installed the Works Home application, which you can download from the App Store. So just go to the iPad store and download Works Home. When you start Works Home, this is what we talked about earlier. You have to enter a URL or your email address. And for the user, it's easier to enter the email address, then he don't have to know anything about the configuration. So we're just entering the email address. And then when he hits next, he's discovering the enrollment URL. And this is what we spoke about earlier. Then the username will be pre-populated with the email address the user entered earlier. So he doesn't need to re-enter the username again.
This is why we need to set the whole authentication mechanism to UPN and not SAM accounting. Because it's confusing for a user. What should I use now? It's just entering a password now, or a PIN, whatever you selected in the enrollment options.
Yeah, and it does use the assumption that my UPN is the same as my email address. So just to get that one.
Yeah, it can be challenging to get that done, especially in an existing company.
So next, Safari is being opened and 2 certificates are being installed. So we'll have to click install, and then if a local PIN code is enabled, you have to enter the PIN code. So we're going to install the certificate. And you have to enter the PIN code.
For those guys who notice, it's Citrix Japan, but we also had Citrix India, I think.
We're different.
And in one go we had another continent. I think it just matters on where the ticket ends up, in which time zone.
GSLB.
So every certificate you see now is a deployment package or a set of policies.
So when you're installing this profile, you're basically at this moment giving the administrator full rights to manage your device. That means that they have full rights to push profiles, to push policies. They're able to what we call is a selective wipe, which means that they will just wipe away any of the corporate applications that you have installed on your device. But they also even have the option to do a factory reset setting of your device as well. And that's the extent that they have management of your device once you have installed this profile. And that before, there was a screen which says, you're giving the administrator full rights, do you agree? And by saying yes, that is what you agree to basically. And the whole aim behind the selected wipe is our full wipe, is that if a device gets lost, and as long as it has access to the internet, they be able to go in and be able to delete any corporate data that's on your device.
And personal.
Well, and personal, of course. Well, if they do a selective wipe, they're not going to touch any of your personal data, they're only going to touch your corporate data. It's only obviously if they do a factory reset setting, and obviously that they don't do.
But there's no option to say, I only want to allow a selective wipe.
No, no.
So
From a user perspective, no.
So you have to trust your company that
Yeah,
they won't wipe your...
Exactly.
And they do that now. They do that
How
already
many of
because
us
they're using email.
install Exchange? or connect to Exchange.
If you got ActiveSync, you can
Exactly. You're giving away the same rights.
Yeah. He doesn't ask, so please
But exactly, that is the thing. It's only with iOS devices, with Android devices, you just agree to everything immediately, and you still have the same capabilities, just not you're not aware of it as with an iOS device.
So from that point of view, it's more user-friendly.
Yeah.
Nice recovery on that.
So for this enrollment, we are using certificate-based authentication. So during the enrollment, a user certificate is being pushed to the device. And for that to work, the user has to use the works pin. And the works pin is different from the device pin. So we have the device pin code set up, and we have the works pin. And the works pin will be the pin he has to enter when he opens WorkZone every time, or at least after the timeout. So here goes the works pin. And confirm it again. Now the device is set up and good to go.
The works pin is stored on the device, so it's a per device pin.
Per user.
The same works pin with different devices.
No, as far as I know, it's a per device pin.
Yeah, same,
It's a good one.
same experience.
But it goes on the to-test list.
Yeah. The user is facing a pin. Okay, he creates a pin and now he's on the next device. Again a pin.
Yeah,
the same
he
pin.
has to enroll the device again,
But you have to
and then
enroll
he
it
has to choose a pin again. So he probably chooses the same pin.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah, because the pin can be configured, because it's a policy setting that is pushed to the device.
And for now we chose 4, but you can even make it 8. But again, that might not be user-friendly.
And we can do two things with the applications. We can put the applications in the corporate app store, so the user is able to select them, and then the application will be installed on the iPad. Or we can push the applications, and then the application, we configured 2 applications to be pushed, and then after enrollment, all the applications which are going to be pushed will be installed automatically on the iPad. So this is an application being pushed to the iPad right direct after the enrollment.
So generally you push applications which are critical.
The receiver or the GoToMeeting, another application is being pushed.
And so here you have, this is an enterprise solution, right?
Yeah.
So the applications are being pushed from the XDM server, and the applications can also be made available from the app controller, but the app controller will push those applications to the XDM server, and the XDM server will then push them down to the device.
And then just to show you, I don't know what's exactly.
Yeah, I have to show what's coming next week.
Yeah. There are 2 stores. XDM has its own store also, next to the enterprise store that's in the app control. At first that was very confusing for us, because by default the XDM store is also enabled. So you would, what is 2 stores? Where are they coming from?
This store is coming from the app controller. So if you open Works Home, and when you're opening the Works store, it's the app controller store.
So when you have an integrated solution, the app controller is going to be responsible for populating your store and to be able to publish all the applications that are available. But say you just have an MDM solution, you still have the ability not to just push applications, policies, but also to push applications. So obviously the MDM server has its own store to make it available to the users as well.
In the demo, we just added a few applications from the store, and they're getting pushed again.
So if
On
the
request.
user installs them. So, and over here we have the store, which is being pushed by the device manager. And we will open it later on. And meanwhile, Works Web, Works Mail is being installed. So, now you see if you open Works Home, you have 2 applications installed. Here you can see some support information, and if you are using geofencing, you can check if you are outside your geofence or within the geofence configured for the user.
It's also possible to, if the GPS tracking is enabled in the options in that box, on the left, that will show that geofencing is on. Otherwise, a user will never be aware of the fact that he's being tracked if you don't tell him. That's good, huh?
We shouldn't bother a user with that.
So previously we showed the App Store from the app controller, and this is the App Store from the device manager. So if you open them, they look quite the same, but they're two different stores.
In previous releases, this had a different look and feel, a little bit more grayish. And when we were making this demo, I just noticed that, hey, it looks exactly the same. So it's even harder to tell them apart.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell them apart, but if you're deploying an enterprise solution, you do not want to make the XDM store available to the users, because there's no point in it. The point is that you'll be using the app controller part. So in your deployment package, you will just remove the ability to push down the XDM store to the users. So from a user perspective, there should not be any confusion, because as an administrator, you make an educated guess on which store you want to make available, unless you have an enterprise solution using the app controller store to be able to publish that to the users.
Yeah, so the lesson
Because it will
learned
give
is
you extra features.
get rid of that icon.
It's enabled by default, so you have to disable it. This was the iPad enrollment. You want to demonstrate the Android enrollment?
Yes.
Which is different.
They're more easier, right?
It's different.
Trying to promote an Android.
It's bigger.
Bigger is better.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to make that one.
Of course.
Skip the first part.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, this is the iTunes of Android. The Play Store.
Ah, you really say that.
So also here you have to download Works Home from the Play Store. Took a while.
So here you can see that the interface is a little bit different, but still the same. It's just an...
By the way, could this is the point where we can use the auto discover?
Yeah, you can get
This, so again, you see the mail address here, and it gets auto-resolved to point to your enrollment server. Basically, that is what happens.
So now it's discovering the enrollment URL.
As you can see, as Karen just mentioned, it doesn't say here that we want full control. You have to read through all this to see what it exactly does.
Well, I know some people that do that. I normally just skip to the bottom where it says accept and just get on with it.
But it's pretty scary because it can do it. Then enter the password. This is a very difficult one.
So you just have to put in the server URL. Over here, the user would have to put in their own username and passwords instead of just putting in the password.
And then on the top left, you see the arrows going up and down. And then those are policies being pushed, packages. Create a work spin, same. Looks a little bit different. It's the same. And now it gets a little bit different. These are the certificates for all the different stores that are being pushed. And on this part, I like Apple better. Because I have to lower the keyboard to get to the OK. Dropped on the recording tool, but it's going back and forth and not handy.
It could be more user friendly.
Yeah, but maybe it's depending on the device how it scales. And again, same store, other apps available. And other features.
Other features.
Yeah, different API, so different features.
No, the Works apps, Works Mail for calendar view different from iOS types to Android types. You cannot edit, for example, calendar entries in iOS. You can edit, and you can even schedule meetings and invite other people, which are additional features with an Android.
Yeah, personally, I really like the Mail app.
But it's not the same set of feature, and sometimes you see that as even another icon.
Yeah,
it's another scale. It's another kind
this is a 720p device, so it's also relatively big.
So you are getting a different user experience on different OS types.
And that you need to really test. On the other hand, in a corporate environment, it's usually iPad. So, but if there is a customer who wants to go with Android, be aware that not everything that is accepted as normal on iPad works on Android. Test it.
Especially if you have your bring your own scenario,
Yep.
then you're not fully in control what device types are being introduced.
The interesting thing is that it seems to be that the iOS is not leading one. Concerning the
feature set.
The feature set.
And that's something that I had a feeling about too. That personally, I think a lot of development goes into the Samsung devices at the moment.
At the moment, there is a push in that area, yes.
Yeah.
That was a very political
Okay, now to show you how to build a restriction. So we build a demo using disabling the camera on a device manager.
So we were going to restrict the camera, the App Store, and Safari. I guess here it says Safari is being restricted. Installing apps, camera.
Screen capture.
So you don't see for iOS people, you don't see the App Store. Safari is missing. The camera icon is gone. So this is a XenMobile device manager restriction policy on the iPad.
But a user could remove that restriction.
Yeah, but you can prevent them from. You can, if you push a profile, you can select if they're able to delete the profile or not.
Yeah, because if you delete those certificates, you get the pop-ups for it. If a user can delete them, they lock them out of the environment, so they can regain control of their device, but they lose the functionality.
So in this case, we are going to re-enroll the device from the Works home. So if the user hits re-enroll and then select yes, the device is being re-enrolled and all the policies are being lifted and the App Store and all the restrictions are gone. So
Okay, device wipe is not possible anymore.
no. After this, the device is not managed anymore. It's an unmanaged device. So now you see, if he within Works home, it's back to the initial configuration. He has to re-enter the UPN name. And if you go back to the home screen, you will see that the App Store and the Safari and the camera, all the applications which were installed before, they're gone. And the Safari browser and on the other screen, the camera icon and the App Store, they are available again.
And that's because the policies are now not pushed anymore.
They're being lifted, so they're gone. So now it's an managed device and the user, we're not able to wipe it again. We recorded the selected wipe. So this is how an enrolled iPad looks like. It works home. We have some applications which were installed. And now from the XenMobile Device Manager we are doing a selective wipe of the device. So his own apps are still on the iPad and only the corporate apps are being revoked. So you see.
Notice the message status of the Works home. There are pending messages for you, and if you click them.
So the applications are being removed, and if you will re-enter or open the Works home, it says policies has been updated.
So at this point, the user knows that something has been pushed onto their device, but there are no details as to what has been pushed on.
And all the apps are gone again.
So, and he has to re-enroll the device again. And all the policies are gone now. But only the corporate apps are gone and his personal apps are still on the device. We have a wrapping video. How to wrap a application.
The most spectacular action that you need to buy a minimum of €1,000 device for. Forces all onto Mac. It's making some people happy, especially Apple.
For example, if you would like to use Works Mail or Works Web, you have to go to the Citrix site. You have to download the IPA file, which has to be wrapped with your own certificate and profile. So we'll go to XenMobile. We'll select the Enterprise Edition. And then somewhere at the bottom, we have the Works Mail applications. For the Android and iOS, those are different applications you have to download.
Yeah, and those are native mobile packages.
So I downloaded the Works Mail IPA file, which is not managed yet. And then we have to open the MDX toolkit. So this is the wrapping application to get the application managed.
That only runs on macOS.
It only is. So it's quite complex. You have to open the application, select Next. You have to select the IPA file. Select Next. And then we can enter some additional information, version number, or if the application is able to run on an iPad or iPhone, because for the share file you have two applications. You have a share file application size for iPhone, and you have the share file application size for an iPad. And here you can configure on which device it should or should not run. And you select Next. And here you have to upload your provisioning profile, for which you need the Apple developer account.
For which you need the signature of the CIO of your company, or someone who is authorized for it, and that is a lengthy process.
You have to select the certificate you're using to sign the application with, and then Next again, and then the application is being wrapped. And finally, a MDX wrapped application is being downloaded from the application. And this is the whole wrapping process.
And this is the whole use case for an Apple device.
Sounds fair.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
And the last thing we recorded was creating a new policy. This is the XenMobile Device Manager console. And
this is a customizable dashboard.
we'll go to the Policies tab. And here you will see for each type of device, Android, iOS, Windows, you can configure different type of policies. We're going to configure an iOS application of an iOS restriction. So these are the available options on iOS. Let's select restriction and then give it a name. And then here we are able to disable certain kind of things like the App Store or the camera. And this is a restriction on the device. So this is not an application restriction, but the device. We won't allow the camera. We are going to remove the App Store, which you saw previously.
iCloud access.
iCloud access. Security things you can disable or enable. Application tab. So here we remove, for example, YouTube, the iTunes Store, and the Game Center. And we disable Safari. And then we click select create. Now a new policy has been created, E2V restrictions. It doesn't do anything yet. We just create a policy. Now the policy has to be deployed through a deployment package. And for every type of device you have to create a deployment package. So we have different policies, but now we are creating a deployment package for iOS.
But also if you want to have different sets of users, a separate package. And
so we're using
if you
our...
want to have a group of users not having a camera and one that has a camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you say anything?
No, that was the Luke.
What's the use case? What's the use case?
So we are opening our default deployment package. Here you can see you can select which group of users it goes to, and here you can select the resources. And what you saw earlier, the application push part, the pushing application, and the store, it are two different things. We're going to add the restriction we created earlier. You can see the applications which can be pushed to the device.
So these will be installed as soon as
automatically, yeah.
automatically.
Yeah. And here you have the applications which are being displayed in the corporate app store. It can be the same applications. You can display an application in the store, and you can also push the same application. So this is the deployment package, and the deployment package is being pushed to with the Android schedule being pulled, but we can manually force it. And now the package is being pushed to the device, and the restriction is in place. So that's the deployment of a package.
Any questions on this?
Those were the demos.
Okay, thank you.
Another use case for this console, the MDM console, is to fool your colleague maybe, so you can bring up messages from the shown on managed device that just looks like something from the iOS.
Yeah.
And then you're saying, oh, please charge €10 on your...
Using this device will cost you
Yeah.
€10 an hour.
Things like that.
Add coffee, yeah.
That's an enterprise feature.
Yes.
So far you've been showing us all kinds of things regarding mobile devices and apps. What with integration with Storefront and, for instance, published applications from XenMobile. In my opinion, Citrix told us this is the solution for the old proposition Citrix Cloud Gateway. So what about the integration with XenMobile published applications? For instance, when I receive a mail in Works Mail with a link to a Visio drawing, can I open it directly from a XenMobile published application?
Not sure.
If you are subscribed to the application and there are file type associations set, then it should reopen them, but I'm not sure if that's...
Should, so, I mean, if we have a link, it's going to be redirected to Works Web, and to published application, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I believe you can do that, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's another one on the test list.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it will work for
But through
SharePoint.
App Controller, you'll be able to integrate
SharePoint
with the
will work.
Storefront server. And once you have to integrate to the Storefront server, if you have XenApp and XenDesktop integrated to the Storefront, then you'll be able to view not only applications that are available through the App Controller, but also applications and desktops that are available through XenApp and XenDesktop as well.
Yeah.
And they become up as normal links within your store, and you can subscribe to them, and they'll be up on your home screen as though they're any other application. So you can have Notepad, for example, on your mobile device, and you can use it as any other application.
Can
But
also
you need to have, sorry, you need to have Citrix Receiver installed also on your mobile device, because at the moment Workzone doesn't read ICA files, so you have to redirect it. To redirect it itself, but to redirect it to the receiver, and receiver will launch that application.
Yeah. So you see when you open that application, which behaves itself like one of those store applications, and gets a nice icon. You open it, and you see it flip, and it opens receiver, and then the ICA session is started, and then you have the application going. My personal opinion is that the Windows apps, especially on an iPhone or a smartphone, are very, very limited. On a bigger form factor device, it can work.
Use the mobility SDK.
Yeah. Exactly. But that involves a lot of work, and you have to hope that it works and that you can get it working.
Yeah, and the
In a
mobility
fashion.
SDK has to be implemented on your XenDesktop infrastructure, your XenApp.
Yeah, but I don't want to use desktop anymore. I want just published application from XenApp or XenDesktop integrated with web and SaaS on, for instance, laptops. So a purely published application environment.
Yeah,
You can
true.
do that. So from your laptop, you can use receiver from that
Yeah.
aspect. So you have your receiver installed on your laptop, and you'll be able to connect to the app controller, who's integrated there with Storefront in the backend, and then you'll be able to see both
Yeah.
web and SaaS applications as well as your XenApp and your desktop applications as well.
That works fine.
So that works fine.
We have no demo of it, but that works as to be expected. The only thing is that controller does not support all the features that Storefront does.
Now, for instance, can I prevent cut and paste with App Controller when I publish a published
Yeah, but
application?
cut and paste is delivered for policies within XenApp or XenDesktop, and not in the app controller.
But it's at the Windows level.
It's a Windows level,
Yeah.
so
Configure
there is no
that.
difference. It behaves, and for the user, it looks and feels like the same Storefront.
But policies are device-based, right?
I was going to say, so
If you
Yeah, but
set a
hold on.
policy on the device, it wouldn't matter
So-
which
But we don't have-
application you're starting.
No,
So
but
the-
we don't have a lot of
we're
Windows
doing-
policies
So
yet.
we're doing two different things. So with if the way the scenario you're describing is that you're using your Windows machine or your Mac machine to connect to the app controller and to be able to get list of applications. But the applications you're getting are web and SaaS applications or Windows applications. Those applications are not wrapped with the FTX technology, so you're not going to be able to implement any of those policies. The policies are only going to be implemented in .IPA or APK applications. And those applications are only accessible from a mobile device. So is it your smartphone or your tablet? So, and the smartphone and the tablet are the only ones that can get enrolled with your the mobile device manager server. So they're the only ones that can get managed by your mobile device manager. Your Windows phones and your Mac, so your Windows machine and your Mac machine don't get enrolled with the XDM server, so they cannot be managed. So there's two distinctions there that you should observe.
That's why I said earlier, for now, we go just with the native Storefront deployment. And as soon as you have an opportunity to integrate web and SaaS, if it comes up, then you have a good use case to go to the app controller. Still be aware of the fact that there might be some features that you need that are not supported.
But in this scenario, there is another thing you have to think about concerning the mode of the X-Gateway research. Because the licenses that are included in the XenMobile Enterprise Edition are universal gateway licenses, so you can use the Smart Access mode. But that does not necessarily mean that all of your users that are using ICA proxy will have as a license for the universal gateway. You if you have an existing infrastructure, you would mostly use the 10,000 unlimited feature, so the access gateway will be in standard mode.
Exactly.
And so perhaps you have to deal with two URLs.
Yeah,
because one is mobile things and one is old school.
Yeah, old school.
Yeah.
But it has multiple purposes. When you have the multiple URLs, and if you separate them, it's easier to admin.
Yes.
And to manage, and the cost is less. The most important reason for most customers. Yes.
What functionality do you lose when you switch from Storefront to
It has something to do with the subscription. I looked it up a few months ago, but
so the thing is that with if you're connected to your Storefront server, if you subscribe to certain applications, if you subscribe on this device and then you subscribe on another device, those list of applications are available to you. You don't have to go and subscribe to them again. Now through App Controller doesn't save subscription, so if I connect through my iPad and I want 5 applications, if I go to my iPhone, those 5 applications won't be available to me. I have to go back into the store and subscribe to them again. So it doesn't save the personal choice, I guess, that you choose of those applications. It doesn't save it from one device to another.
So you don't get the follow me app feature.
And that seems logical too, because if I'm doing XenMobile, I have my iPad, I have my iPhone. I don't want the same applications on my iPhone as I have on my iPad.
So
yeah, it should be. Why not? It should have a context layer. You can choose. If I'm on the iPhone, I want to see these. If I'm on Windows, I want to see these, and then they follow each other.
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, but you can also configure Storefront to aggregate the app controller, so we have it all in one place.
That doesn't work for the Sciberras app.
No.
That only works for others.
That's the 8.5 way of doing it, if I'm not correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Storefront in front.
No,
Yeah.
so Storefront in front is a node deployment, so now you have the app controller in front from 8.6. Last November.
So you can't aggregate app controller and the X apps onto Storefront.
No. So you always have to connect to the app controller, and then the app controller will be able to populate applications from the Storefront server. So you cannot connect to the Storefront server to get then applications from there.
Okay.
So if there are no more questions, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Karen.
Okay, listen to a break or go straight? I don't know, it's up to be with you all. Okay. So just to introduce myself, for those who don't know me, my name is Sciberras. I work with Citrix. I've been with Citrix for the past 8 years now. I started with mostly work with Desktop as an escalation engineer, and then for the last 8 months I moved to Readiness and I work on XenMobile. So my job is pretty much to train or support engineers to come to XenMobile products. This is a presentation of myself and my counterpart in the US, Adolfo Montoya, we created for TechEdge. And we're speaking about different tools that we use to be able to troubleshoot XenMobile. And so what we've done is we're going to go deep into the authentication flow, because that will touch all the different components. And then we can speak about different consoles and different tools that we use to help us with troubleshooting. And hopefully by the end of the presentation, you realize that troubleshooting XenMobile maybe is not as complex as it's Right, so for the agenda today, we're going to first speak about the authentication flow from when a user downloads their Works Home application through the store till when they're being presented with the Workspace and the list of applications and the components that go through and the workflow. We'll then go a bit deeper into the single sign-on process between the NetScaler gateway and the app controller, and we'll see what needs to be done so that the app controller can trust the NetScaler gateway and we can have a single sign-on process. And finally, we speak about a new feature that we introduced with, I believe, XenMobile 8.7, which is called the step-up authentication for Works applications, where for some Works applications, you can add an additional authentication step to allow users to authenticate again on just specific Works applications. And I'll go through the benefits and how we configure that. Right, so let's just look at our setup. This is just a simple setup. It's just an enterprise solution setup. So we have our device, so this is our smartphone, our tablet device, and we've downloaded Works Home from the store. Now Works Home is going to be a unified application, so it's going to be used for two purposes. One, to enroll the device with the mobile device manager, and also to be presented with a list of applications to the user through the Works app, through the app controller, right? Now as you can see, the Works Home under the hood is divided into two modules. So we have the MDM module, which is going to handle the communication with the XDM server, and we also have what we call the MAM module, the mobile application management, and that is going to handle the communication with the app controller. And later on, when we look at some logs that we obtain for Works Home, we're going to see different logs that are coming from the MDM portion and the MAM portion. So when you're looking at logs and you're troubleshooting, say for example, communication with the XDM server, you already know that from those logs you need to be looking at the MDM log traces to be able to obtain the information that you need for that part of the process. Now on the NetScaler gateway, so obviously we're going to have the general devices on a trusted network, 3G, 4G public Wi-Fi, so we put a NetScaler gateway to handle the internal and external communication. And we're going to be using two components of the NetScaler. So we're going to be using the load balancer. So the load balancer is going to sit in front of the XDM server to be able to, one, allow the XDM server to be placed on the internal network, and also to be able to manage multiple XDM servers if we have them. And also we're going to be able to use the gateway to be allow the authentication of the user when it's connecting to the app controller. So we already spoke about the XDM server, so obviously then we're going to have the app controller to be able to provide users with applications, and to be using the Active Directory to be able to see that user which group it belongs to within AD, and through group membership it will be able to identify the list of applications that the user is going to be entitled to. That's a basic setup. Right, so as we've seen, and there's quite a few demos, so the user here is going to launch Works Home, and then they can put in their email address, or they can put in the URL for the server, depending if they already have the discovery configured or not. Now, regardless of the process, the user will have to enter their username and password, or they will just have to enter the password depending on what is being configured. Regardless of the setup, we're just going to have the user credentials, and user credentials are going to be handed over to the NetScaler load balancer. Now the NetScaler load balancer, effectively, we're going to configure two virtual servers. So we have a wizard on the NetScaler, which will guide you through it, so you don't have to worry about it. But basically, we're going to have two virtual servers configured, one on port 443 and the other on port 8443. And with XenMobile 8.6, we introduced this feature where we can now support SSL offload on the NetScaler. So the NetScaler is going to terminate the connection and then start a new connection on port 80 on the XDM server. So obviously here the NetScaler is going to be handling all the SSL processing time. So obviously this XDM server will gain better scalability because it doesn't need to handle that type of processing. Obviously now there are debates on this because obviously some people won't be happy to have a connection between the DMZ and the XDM server over port 80. But that's then obviously a debate you'd have to have if you want to have better scalability or better security, I guess. Right, so on port 80 we're going to hand over the user credentials to the XDM server. The XDM server is going to be able to validate the user by starting an adapt session to the Active Directory. Once we've validated the user, then we'll be able to enroll that device. So we're going to be able to push down the device certificate, allowing then the XDM server to be able to track that device. Now one thing to know, once the device has been enrolled, what happens in the backend is that the XDM server is going to allow a mapping between the user credentials and the device identity. And by having that mapping, then the XDM server will be able to identify the list of policies and applications that that user is entitled to, associate them with that device ID, and then be able to push down that package down to the device. This is what we've seen then in the demo that was shown. Right, so one of the also information that is sent down from the XDM server down to the device is also the URL for the NetScaler gateway, because the user doesn't know that URL. All they know is the URL of the NetScaler load balancer. But having this information, now the Works Home will be able then to be able to connect to the NetScaler gateway, because now it has received the URL from the gateway from the XDM server. Once the gateway has obtained this information, it also has obtained the credentials from the user through Works Home. This is done seamlessly, the user doesn't need to authenticate again. We'll be able to start an LDAP session to Active Directory to be able to validate the user. Now, in the mobile 8.6, we also introduced a new feature where we can support multiple domains on the app controller. And basically what we're doing here, we're handing over this responsibility to the NetScaler gateway. So it's the responsibility of the NetScaler gateway to be able to authenticate users of the different domains that have been specified on the app controller. And once the user has been authenticated, then the NetScaler gateway will be able to send these details to the app controller. So it's sending over the user credentials as well as the domain. And by sending over the domain, the app controller will be able to know to which domain that user belongs to. Now once it's obtained the user credentials as well as the domain, then it will start an LDAP session to see that user in which group it belongs to. And by knowing in which group it belongs to, be able to find a list of applications and then be able to present them to the user. Right, so now that we have an idea of the flow and how the different components sit within the authentication flow, let's look at some of the tools that we have available to allow us to troubleshoot in this environment. And the first tool I'd like to speak about is called the Helper Console. So this is a console on the XDM server. And this console will allow us to obtain log files from the XDM server. So here we have our mobile device manager console. To launch the console, you just need to put the IP address or the URL of your XDM server /ZDM. And then I'm going to log in using my username and password. Now once I've logged in, to be able actually to access the helper console, what I need to do is I need to remove the console part and do /helper.jsp. And I'll be immediately redirected to the troubleshooting console, if you want to put it that way. So there's a number of good information over here. You can see, for example, the number of installed patches that will be available from the XDM server, and also other interesting information. Unfortunately, we won't have time to go through it today, but what we want to look at today is obtaining logs from the XDM server. So to do that, we're going to go to the section called Tools within this section, and then click on Logs. So here we're presented with a number of logs that are available on the XDM server. So we can see security logs, we can see also maybe logs from the console. Just come up in a second. So as you can see ZDM security logs, you can see console logs. What is of interest to us today is the last log file called ZDM log file, because this is going to have the information we need when we're authenticating a user and enrolling the device. So how is this log file populated? Well, this log file is populated what we call with a number of loggers. So each logger will be associated with a different part of the process. For example, here we have a logger for the APNS. We can see the level, it is set to error, and we can also change the level as well if we want more valuable detail about that particular logger. So we can go from all to trace, debug, down to off as well. The loggers are quite verbose, so be careful on the level that you place it on. Now, when we want loggers for the authentication process, one logger that will be of use to us is called the LDAP logger. In this case, it usually sets to warning, I believe, but in this case I set it to all because I want as much information as possible for this particular logger within an amount of time. The other logger which would be of interest to us is the enroll logger, because we're also enrolling the device. So here there's the enroll logger, and again I have set it to all because I want as much information as possible about this particular logger. Right, so once we're happy and we've set everything correctly, if you go to the ZDM log file and you go to the end, you can see a little asterisk and an underscore. That is a link to be able to update that log file. So you can save the log file, obviously, and then you can also open it through Firefox or Notepad or whatever. So here we have information that we obtained from the log file. Now we don't need to read every single line of the trace. What we're going to do is use different keywords. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the name of the LDAP logger to be able to find information immediately that is association with the LDAP service. So over here we can immediately see information that's been produced by the LDAP logger. So we can see information about, say, so every single line of the trace actually, has a date and time of when it has been generated. This is very important. So you always ask the customer, when did you see the issue, at what time? So you can actually see the part of the trace which is of interest to you. Don't need to read every single line of the trace. We can see the level that is the debug line of trace and the logger that has actually produced that line of trace.
Karen, is this the regular, the normal time or the UTC time?
Pardon?
Which is shown here, time of the XDM server?
Oh, time of the XDM server.
Okay.
So then also you can see the messages about that particular logger. So you can see, for example, it's trying to connect to the LDAP server. You can see how long it's taken, and also you can see information about that particular user. So over here you can just see that you don't, you don't need to read every single line of the trace. You need to have an understanding of the flow, and then be able to use different keywords to get you to the part of the trace which is of interest to you. Right, now another place where to obtain is, good logs is from WorksHome. So WorksHome is an integral part when it comes to the authentication flow. So let's see how we can obtain logs for WorksHome and also for different MDX applications as well. So here I have my iPad, I have a number of applications. So I just have WorksHome, I have both WorksMail and WorksWeb, and I also have SharePoint. So the first thing I need to do is I need to click on WorksHome to be able to gain access to my logs. So here is my screenboard. I can see the list of applications that I've subscribed to. Now to be able to obtain the logs, I need to go to the support page. So here you need to switch from right to left to be able to gain access to that support page. So here is your support page, and as you can see, you'll be able then to obtain the logs by accessing the little icon over here. So it's a little round circle with an envelope that will be able allow you to be able to obtain the logs for both WorksHome and other MDX applications. So here you can choose which logs you want to obtain. Is it WorksHome or other MDX applications that you have obtained? So not web and SaaS applications, it's just MDX applications that you can obtain the logs for. So I'm going to choose WorksHome. It's going to generate the logs and it's going to attach it immediately to an email. So here we see information that we have available in this email, this pre-populated email. So here we have a section where the user can describe what the problem is. We also have details about the device itself, so the version of the device, the version of WorksHome that's being used as well. So this gives the support engineer a bit of an understanding of what they're trying to troubleshoot. And then at the bottom you can see that you also have attached the log files that have been generated from WorksHome.
Cameron, can you also populate an email so the user doesn't see that email?
Yeah, so what you're going to do is then you can send the email to whoever you want, to yourself or to another support engineer.
You can't prevent the user from changing that email?
They can change it, you mean as in change it completely, or?
Well, a whole load of users are going to see jailbroker equals yes. Change it to jailbroker. What does they send?
No, they can't do that, they can't change the details, yeah.
Okay.
You're trusting that the user is going to be honest.
They obviously don't understand that you know anyway.
But when I'll show you in the next session, when you obtain the logs, you actually have that information in one of the log files. So if they've lied, you're going to be able to catch them up quite easily. So let's look at the WorksHome logs. So here I'm back onto my PC, I've extracted the logs. As you can see, we have both diagnostic logs and also CTX_app_info. So we're going to launch the app info log, and here you're going to see information that we've seen that was populated in the email itself. So over here you can see that it's going to have information, but actually, yes, there is jailbroken. So jailbroken is equal to null. If they've changed that, then you know that there is a discrepancy between what's in the email and what has been sent to you. But obviously this you can't trust it because they cannot change this data. So,
by the way, it's a very good idea to give the user the ability to send logs to support engineers.
Yes, I think so.
That's a great idea.
Thank you. So here we have a number of log files. So we have, for example, CTX logs underscore and the date and time. So by knowing, asking the customer, when did you see the issue, at what time, you also know which log file will hold the information that you need. So you don't need to read through all 4 log files. So it's always very critical to ask the customer to get as much information out of them as possible. So let's look at the structure of this log file. So first again, we have a timestamp, and with the timestamp obviously we have the date and time where that line of trace was generated. And again, obviously it's really important to be able to know which line of trace, which section of the line of traces is important to you. The next part is module. So for every single line of trace, you know which module has generated that line of trace, and you also know the function that has been used to generate that line of trace. So as you can see over here, both every module is either MDM or MAM. So as we say, if you're troubleshooting an issue which has to do with the XDM server, then you're going to be looking at the MDM portions of those lines of traces. While if you're looking to do with the app controller, then you're looking at the MAM portion of those traces. So immediately you have a distinction of what you're trying to look for and what you're trying to troubleshoot as well, and which lines are of interest to you. We also have a message. So this will show you what type of message it is. Is it an error? Is it a warning? Is it an information? Is it a debug? It gives you a bit of context to that particular message. So it's always important to read the whole line of trace and not to just jump to the messages and try to see what you're trying to find, but to be able to read through so you get a bit of context of that particular message as well. And then we have the message itself. So for example, we can see that, for example, over here we have the app controller URL and we have the URL for that app controller. One thing to note as well, because we know as the way the setup is configured, we know that, for example, the app C URL is actually the gateway URL, not the actually app controller, because we know there's a gateway sitting between the works code and the app controller. So obviously it's important to see the whole device to know how the device is being implemented, and then to be interpreted the logs within that deployment. So over here we can see the full log where we can see that this is an info message. We know the function and what the function is used to generate this message, and then we can see the actual message itself. Right, lastly, I just wanted to show you briefly the master user list. This has already actually been covered earlier by the guys, but I just wanted to show you. So here we have the configuration for supporting multiple domains within the app controller. So I'm in the app controller console over here. If you go to settings, and then you navigate down to Active Directory, you have over here the list of 80 domains that you have configured within the app controller. One thing to note is that there's on the first domain, there is a little very good over there. That means that is the default domain. And generally, when you've configured your app controller, the first domain that you have specified will end up being the default domain. Now, if you want to change that default domain, you can do so. So if you go to the edit button, you'll be able then to set another domain to be the default domain. So it doesn't always have to be the first one that has been configured with the app controller. Now, we also said that with to be able to authenticate the users, we're going to also handle that to the Netscaler gateway. So within the Netscaler gateway, we're going to create an LDAP policy for each of the domains that have been specified within the app controller. So here we can see an LDAP policy created for each of the domains within the app controller. And this is how then the Netscaler gateway will be able to authenticate the users. Again, you don't have to set the different priorities. They can both be the same priority. It doesn't need to be different priorities. Now, when the app controller obviously has been configured within the different domains, what's occurring in the background is that the app controller is downloading the list of users from each of the different domains. And if you want to ensure that the correct users have been synced correctly with the app controller database, you don't need to update the database itself. You can look at what we call the master user list, and you'll be able to see the list of users that has been synced by the app controller. So what you do is that you go to the URL for the app controller, but instead of going to control point, you say /admin. This has already been shown. So you have the old admin page for the app controller. And what you need to do is you need to change the view from configuration to manage users. And here you can put in the password. And this is the same username and password that you use to log into the app controller console. So here then you can see the whole list of users from all the different domains that have been configured in the app controller. And you can be able to confirm that the correct users are synced correctly. So by using the print service, for example, domain 2, you'll be able to see then just the list of users for that particular domain. 5 minutes? Okay, I'm going to zoom to the next one.
Don't mean to rush you. We've just been notified.
I see, okay. Right, so let's look at the integration. I'm not going to finish on 5 minutes, I know. Let's look at the integration between Netscaler gateway and the app controller. So here we're going to see how single sign-on works between the app controller and Netscaler gateway so that the user won't be prompted again to be able to you're given be able to sign on again to the app controller. So once you log into the NetScaler gateway, it's expected that the app controller will be able to trust the gateway, obtain those credentials, and then be able to immediately provide the user with a list of applications without the user needing to authenticate again with the app controller. So as we saw, we already saw this setup, so you put in username and password, we validate the credentials to the Active Directory, and then we'll be able to start a single sign-on process. So what happens? So we're going to run a network trace, and this is kind of more important from a network trace. We're going to look at the different headers that are used to be able to allow the single sign-on process. So the works home is going to inject the NetScaler gateway URL in the header, in the HTTP header, the Citrix gateway. The NetScaler gateway is going to receive this information, and then it's going to use that URL to be able to inject and populate the HTTP header Citrix via. And the information that is obtained from the Citrix via needs to match exactly what has been configured as the external URL for the app controller. And by being able to map both that information, they will be able to trust that gateway and then be able to have a single sign-on process. Now with MasterClass 8.6, we also have the opportunity to support multiple domains. So for example, in a GSLP configuration where you're going to have the same URL but you have different VIPs, we also use another HTTP header called the Citrix via VIP. So this will allow then the app controller to understand which VIP has actually authenticated the user, and we might be able to have then a callback session for that particular VIP as well.
I've got you some more minutes. So
Thank you.
We've got 10 more minutes.
Perfect. So, and once this information matches what has been configured on the app controller, then you'll be able to trust the NetScaler gateway until we have a single sign-on process. And then we perform single sign-on. So basically, as you can see, the HTTP headers are very important, and this is what you'll be using when you're looking through a network trace. So from the client side, you're going to have the Citrix gateway being populated via the works home with the NetScaler gateway FPDN. And from the NetScaler side, you're going to have the Citrix via and the Citrix via as well. Right, so this is where you're going to have the comparison. So in the configuration for the app controller, you'll be able to compare what's in the external URL needs to match exactly what has been populated by works home or what the user has populated. If there's a mismatch, then you're not going to have a single sign-on between the gateway and the app controller, and the user will have to authenticate again. And so also with the list of callbacks, the IP address needs to match exactly what has been populated in the Citrix via as well. Right, so here I'm just doing a small demo just to show you what a single from a user experience, what a single sign-on experience is if single sign-on has broken between the two devices. So here we're on the app controller. I want to just enter the username and password. So to configure the gateway, we're going to go to the settings options. And we're going to navigate to deployment. So at this moment it's working, so I'm going to break it by mistyping the external URL that has been specified on the app controller. So I'm going to go to edit, and I'm just going to, at the moment it's .NET, so I'm just going to remove it, just remove the E and do NT. So now we have a mismatch between what's being populated within works home and what is available in the configuration of the app controller. Now to be able to simulate this so that we won't go to a device, and it's also good for troubleshooting, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to launch the URL from the browser and be able to access the app controller that way. And this is going to be the same behavior as if you were launching it from your device as well. So you're going to go to the gateway, put in username and password, and the expectation is that you're going to be immediately redirected to the app controller and be listed with a list of applications. But here we're going to be redirected to the app controller, and again we're being asked for the details because we have a mismatch between that information. So here now basically the user will have to authenticate again to be able to access their list of applications. So as you can see, these are the list of applications on the app controller. Because they have 3 wrapped MDX applications, they're grayed out. I cannot access them because I'm launching from a Windows machine, and we cannot launch any MDX applications from a Windows system. It's just web and SaaS applications, and if we're integrated with Storefront, any other Windows applications as well. So again, so this is one of the first steps that you would test if you have single sign-on not working, is to ensure that the URL is set correctly, and so by just fixing it and clicking on save, then you immediately have fixed the issue. So one of the good things is about testing through a browser is that you remove the additional complexity. You're removing the devices out of the picture. So you're just testing from a browser to go to the gateway, the app controller, and you're going to see if that works. If that works well, then you know the problem is with devices and not with anything that has been configured within your infrastructure. And you can break this down further. You can connect directly to the app controller, not for the single sign-on purposes, but say you're troubleshooting something else, you can connect to the app controller directly and see if that works. And then build it out slowly. Go to the gateway and then test the devices last. And you know where within your process you can actually have an issue. And so as you can see now that it's been able to work correctly. So we said what to check, so the external URL on the gateway, and also be able to populate the policies within the schema. Lastly, I'm sorry I'm zooming through, but we're apparently out of time. So the last thing I'd like to speak about is quickly the step-up authentication policy. So basically here with MDX applications, one of the policies that we have configured is that, and this is introduced with App Controller 2.9, is that you can redirect traffic from a specific application to an additional Netscaler gateway VIP or an additional Netscaler itself. So here is when you want to have an additional authentication. Say a particular application is very secure, you want users to not only to authenticate but to redirect that traffic to a different Netscaler gateway VIP. You can do that by configuring the policies within that particular MDX application. And this is again configured on a per application basis. So all the traffic of all the other applications and WorksHome will be flowing through one particular Netscaler gateway, but that specific application will flow through a different Netscaler gateway. So here's a quick demo. So here again, I'm in my App Controller console, and I'm going to configure the two Netscaler gateways, one for WorksHome and the other also for this individual MDX application. So again, I'm going to go to Settings, and go to Deployment. And here I have two gateways configured. So here again I have the URL for the first gateway. This is the default gateway, and I've chosen to use this for WorksHome. And as you can see, well, it's maybe a bit hard to see, but the logon type is set to domain only. And your username will just need to, the user will just need to put in their username and password and log into WorksHome. Now the second Netscaler gateway is the one that I'm going to be configuring for this specific application. And here I've put in the logon type to be domain and security token. So here I not only need to put in the domain, but also a security token as well. And this I'm going to just allow just certain applications, MDX application, to be able to route their traffic to this second Netscaler gateway. So once I'm happy with this configuration, the next step is to configure the individual application. So we're going to go to the section Apps and Docs. Here I have the list of applications that are available to me, and I'm going to choose an application. So I'm going to decide that Quick Office is going to be a really secure application, and this is where I want the traffic to be redirected to another Netscaler. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this application. And remember, this is configured into Policies section, so I'm going to move to the Policies section within this properties of this application. So here I have the list of properties. These are all the MDX policies that get wrapped when you go through the MDX toolkit. So we're going to look at the Authentication section, and over here we have a section called Netscaler Gateway Address. So here you're going to put in the URL of the second Netscaler gateway. So once you're happy with that configuration, that's all that needs to be done. Then you can click on Save. Right, so now let's look from a user experience. What is the experience when we go through this configuration? Again, here I'm on my iPad. I have a number of applications, and I also have obviously Quick Office. So this is, I've already subscribed to it, and it's been pushed down to my home screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Works Office, and we're going to see what the experience is. So instead of immediately launching, it's asking me that I need to sign on to WorksHome. So it's going to redirect me to WorksHome, and then WorksHome will be able to redirect me to the second Netscaler gateway. So here, as you can see, you know that you're already on the second Netscaler gateway, because not only need to put in the password, but you also need to put in the token as well. And this is to add for additional security for some applications. You're authenticating through Workshome, and then you'll be automatically redirected to that application. And now we have to be able to access that application. Now the traffic for this application is going to the second Netscape gateway. Now let's obtain some logs for the step-up authentication. So again, as we did before, I'm going to go to Workshome, go to the support page and click on the icon over there, the little envelope. And I'm immediately going to choose which application I would like to obtain the logs from. So in this case, it's going to be Quick Office. So to go redirects quickly to Quick Office, obtain the list of logs and then attach them to that email. And once we're happy with all the information that we have available over here, then we can send it to ourselves or any other support engineer. Right, so finally, the last step would just go see some of the logs. So okay, now I'm with my Windows machine, I've extracted the logs. As you can see now, we have an additional folder available to us. So this is the MDX app, so it shows that the logs within this folder are from MDX applications for that particular user. And if we click on the MDX apps, again, we're going to see a folder called Quick Office, so we know the logs for that particular application is within this folder, so it won't mix up if we have other logs as well that have been generated. Go to Diagnostics, and again, we have the log file. Same format as Workshome, where you have the date and time where that particular log file has been generated. Now, again, we don't need to read every single line of the trace. What we're going to use is going to use a keyword to be able to get to the section for the step-up authentication. So one keyword that I'll be using today to look through these logs is called step-up. As you can see here, so we're just using step-up as a keyword. And we'll immediately jump to the section of the log file which has information about the step-up authentication for that specific user. So again, as you can see, using critical keywords will allow you to get quicker to the section of the log file which is of interest to you. And you can see interesting information over here. So you can see that there's a log request asking for a step-up authentication is required. You can also see that we're going to be sending the log on request, and you can also see the URL of the second Netscaler gateway. So immediately by obtaining these logs, you'll be able to get an understanding of what's going on within that particular application itself. Right, so here's just some further reading, some interesting articles and blogs about authentication. And these are the different takeaways. So if you'd like to follow us on Twitter, so I'm at XenTipster. And my colleague Adolfo also helped me with create this presentation is at XenInformer. That's it, thanks so much.